no timeline is meant or designed to contain what our timeline is currently containing. We've had a convergence point in our timeline, which is where the Mandela effect came in. The convergence point that I'm referring to is where all parallel realities started collapsing into one point. And we really noticed Mandela effect in the early 2000s. You could argue late 90s, early 2000s, whatever, but at the point of 2012, that was the convergence point where all the parallels needed to start collapsing into one solid timeline, which is why when we opened this podcast, I opened with that. We are in one timeline. I said, I know it looks like there's a million different timelines. You are in one timeline with two streams. Within each stream, there's a variability of frequencies, but they're still aligned to either a higher or a lower timeline, a higher or a lower frequency. Those are the two options right now. But the question you asked me is why? What is driving this ascension, which is a cyclical event? It's God's calendar. And this cyclical event will happen because this is the best way that I can describe it to you is to say to you, God's voice has called this creation, which is the false matrix. God's voice has called this back into itself, as if to say, it's enough now. It's time now. It's time to dissolve this thing. So we're in the process of dissolving the false matrix. We're in the process of collapsing all of those parallels that were never meant to be as many as they were. They were as many parallels as they were because of the manipulation of the false matrix. In any given organic timeline, yes, you can have a few splinters, but not the thousands of timelines that we had. Those thousands of timelines were there because of the manipulation, the malevolent manipulation of the archonic influence of the false matrix. And that's where we go back into that first podcast that you and I did together, where I explained that in a little bit more detail. But that's the voice, that's the instruction that our timeline is obeying. It's the instruction of God, source, creator consciousness saying enough of the perversion and the distortion, because nothing can carry on forever, which is not organic. We lived in a false matrix. In other words, it was inorganic. In other words, it wasn't of God's original creative design. It was hijacked out of the natural divine matrix. So now God's going, okay, you've had your playtime. You've had that time in the false matrix. It was a great experiment, but we're done. And that's why we on the surface also have that sense. We all have it where we go, I don't know why, but this is an important life. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm not coming back again. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm here for a very big reason, and it's frustrating because I don't know what it is. You don't need to know what it is. You only are recognizing something big is going down here. This is no ordinary life. This is not just another reincarnation. This is not just another day in the false matrix. Every day is another day of the collapse behind you. So it's like a demolition in slow motion, and you are living through it. And that demolition is not even happening only externally, it's happening internally too, because everything that happens out there is happening in here at the same time.
What are some of the hallmarks that you see externally happening around the planet? I mean, I know it's a bit of a preloaded question. I mean, there's a lot going on around the planet. But what are some of the things that you can point out that, people can readily identify with, like, hey, this is clearly a sign that this is going on?
There are like you said, there are so many. I mean, we can look at the Armageddon type of scenarios that we see playing out on the planet right now. And there are multiple of them. There is such a threat from what we could call Big Brother. There is such a threat from an overseeing, overarching, overreaching eye. Something that transcends all governments. We have an awareness that there is something beyond that wants to ensnare humanity, or maybe it's by digital currency, maybe it's by some kind of injectable. We have all of these things in our awareness. We try to ignore them because it's very uncomfortable to look at, but there is that looming threat. That looming threat is the dissolving of the false matrix. That's what we're seeing. Why are none of those plans working out the way that they were predicted to, the way that the planners, the architects of that plan wanted them to? Because I promise you this, they wanted humanity to be a lot more compliant than humanity ever was. So the reason that none of those things will work out or can work out the way that they're planned is because of our consciousness, because we keep doing this really inconvenient thing, at least from the perspective of the archons, it's very inconvenient, and that is evolving. The more our consciousness shifts, the more the best laid plans of these very high minds, and I say high not as in highly evolved, but as in incredibly intelligent, they laid out these plans, which was a snare for us to fall into in order for us to be re-trapped, resubmitted back into another false matrix program. That was their plan. We're not going along with their plan. We keep thwarting it, and we don't even know how. We, the light workers, I love this about us. We're operating blind. Does any one of us have a game plan? Does any one of us have a roadmap that says, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is where to next? No, none of us do. Because the plan isn't here seeded into our logical consciousness, because then it can be read. The plan must be a moment by moment evolution. That's what it is. That's why it's quantum. That's why it's unpredictable. The only thing that we have is a sense of I'm evolving, I'm growing, I'm elevating, I'm becoming more, and I'm becoming more exponentially. Because why? Amrit is becoming more with me. I am becoming more as me. You and you and you and we and us, we're becoming more evolved. We're holding more love. We're holding more forgiveness. We're holding more truth. Our discernment is coming online, albeit slowly for some people. Our unconditional love is just budgeting every now and then. There's a little something that wasn't there before, a trace of compassion that wasn't there before. This is us growing without a game plan, and that's all we need. All we need at the ground level is to shift frequency into something higher, and we're doing that every single day. Every single day. All of nature is doing this with us. We're not alone. And that's another thing that we're seeing. If you say to me, what are the hallmarks that this is taking place? Okay, we can look at the doomsday scenario stuff. We can also look at the climate change stuff, because that's all part of it. But a bigger thing for me that's really interesting here is how nature is beginning to work with humanity. The whales are coming online, the elephants are coming online, the dolphins are coming online, the crystals are coming online, and we've even got celestial elemental beings that are heavily involved in our ascension. One of them, a very, very recent arrival, is of something called a mega dragon. So a mega dragon is literally, like the name says, a massive dragon. And there are at least 7 of them, potentially more, that went into slumber at the beginning of the false matrix. They were invited to leave when our planet undertook to participate in the false matrix program. They were invited to leave along with all high consciousness beings, because a high consciousness being cannot live in a false matrix. And they said, no, we won't leave, but we will go into a stasis, which is a type of a slumber, for the duration of the false matrix. And then at the end, we'll wake up. Okay, that was the agreement. We've had the first of those dragons awaken. And that mega dragon is the size of multiple mountain ranges. He's massive. He's red. He's light, like a ruby red light. And he's flying over the planetary surface. And the only way I can say it to you is he's just pure pissed. Like, this should never have gone this far. This is not what we agreed to. This is an overreach. This is an overstretch. This is the false matrix that has been so unfairly and unnaturally extended to give it a life it should never have had. So this mega dragon is overviewing all of this and calling in cosmic reinforcements. And as those cosmic reinforcements come in, first of all, they ground in through the ring of fire. That's their entry point into our planet, because the ring of fire in itself is a node point through which these higher consciousness beings can come. They come in through the ring of fire, and then they are allowed for the first time since the initiation, since the beginning of the false matrix. They are back on the surface with humanity. And so what we have therefore is reinforcements. We're bolstered. We're held, we're elevated, we're upheld. We're buoyed in a way that we haven't been before. And then guess what the humans on the surface do? The humans on the surface go, we're so forgotten, we're so abandoned, we're so forlorn. No, we're not. But you have to tune in. You have to be able to tune in to feel what your eyes can't pick up yet.
Hey there, Inspired Evolutionary. If you absolutely loved this, well then here's a full conversation with this guest on the Inspired Evolution podcast. Check it out now.